Once again, namaskar to all. Today in the session of strength of material, we are going to deal with the another important topic of the strength of material, and they are on the studs. That is the type of a column. And here we are going to discuss the Euler's theory on the buckling of column. So topic we are going to cover is Euler's theory on buckling of studs of column. In the next, we are going to conclude on the theory, and in the conclusion we will talk about the equivalent lengths. So as we have discussed in our the previous session on the columns, that the columns fails because not of the yielding point, they failed because of the instability. That is the condition when the load has reached the critical value beyond which the stability of the column is transformed into the unstable equilibrium conditions, whereby they readily collapse and beyond such a point the stresses increases continuously to the fracture point. So instability is because of the buckling of the column, or the which is also known as the crumbling of the column. So you Euler has proposed a theory for the buckling of the studs, and we have already discussed studs is the type of a column whose slenderness ratio is large. So Euler has proposed the theory for the buckling of the column, and based upon this theory, we will try to find out the critical value of the load that is safe when applied to the columns, and beyond such a point, the columns immediately collapse. So it is very important to find out such limiting values of the load, and these loads values are given by the Euler theory. So we will talk about first the assumptions, which are assumptions for the theory. And because in the Euler theory and in the prerequisites for the topic, I have already discussed the bending moment equation and the relationship between the slope, deflection, and all. Since we are using the simple bending theory, so obviously the assumption related to the simple bending theory is also going to be applied here. So first assumption is going to be material is homogeneous, isotropic, and linear. So what does it mean? Material is homogeneous means the properties of the material throughout is going to be the same. It is going to be made of the same type of material. And isotropic means it is independent of the direction, means it is not going to be the value of the property of the material is not going to be directional dependent. That if something's values in the x direction is say a, then in the y direction the values of that property is also going to be the a. So isotropic means it is independent of the direction. Properties are independent of the direction, and linearity means your load is going to be directly proportional to the deformation, so that we can use the various theories of the elasticity like simple bending equation and the proportional limit of the elasticity that defines the Young's modulus. So these are the meanings of these assumptions, that what the isotropic means and what the homogeneous and the linearity of the material means. Second assumption is columns no imperfections no imperfections related to loading and column is allowed. That is, imperfection related to the load means the load is going to be applied purely axially. There will be no eccentricity, and the columns and the imperfection related to the columns. We have already considered that the material is going to be isotropic, homogeneous, and the linear. So there will be no imperfection related to the material. So only remaining imperfection which is associated with the column is going to be the initial curvature. So if there is going to be initial curvature, then the susceptibility for the bending is going to be increased. And similarly, if the load is not purely applied along the axis, then again, because of the eccentricity of the load, susceptibility for the bending is going to be increased. So these are the reasons which increase the tendency of the bending of the columns, and hence increases the chances of the buckling of the columns. So we are taking the assumption that your column is perfectly straight, and the load is going to be applied purely along its longitudinal axis. Another assumption is L by K ratio is going to be very large. That is, we deal with cylinder columns, and cylinder columns are called as struts. So this will ensure that the material is going to be the member is going to be failed because of the buckling. If the slenderness ratio is small, that is in comparison to the cross sectional area length is small, or vice versa, in comparison to the length cross sectional area is very large, then the failure of the material is going to be because of your yielding, that is under compression. Because of the crushing load, the material is going to be failed under compression. But if the length in comparison to the cross sectional area is going to be large, and when the column is going to be slender, which is called as stud, then the buckling is going to be ensured, and the material is going to be failed because of the instability condition arises out of the buckling. So in order to apply the Euler's theory on the buckling of the studs, it is very important that we are dealing with the studs. And another assumption is change in length of the column, that are the studs, under compression will be neglected. And the another assumption is going to be the cross section of the strut will be uniform throughout the length. Throughout the length. These are going to be the assumptions which we are going to follow when we are going to discuss the Euler's theory on the buckling of the studs. In the Euler's theory, we are going to find out the limiting value of the load, that is safe for the stable loading of the column. Now we will discuss the derivation for the critical load which is going to be denoted by PE based on the Euler's theory. And we are going to consider the different end conditions of the studs. So first we are going to deal with the studs whose ends are both ends are pinned. So first of all we are going to consider the coordinate systems we are going to deal with. We are going to deal with the left hand Cartesian coordinate system, and say along the horizontal axis we are considering the x, and along the vertical axis we are considering the deflection. And usually, as we know that the columns are oriented in the vertical direction, that is perpendicular to the horizontal direction, but in order to have the consistencies with the positive slopes, and we have already considered the deflection along the y-axis, so we are going to orient them such that the deflection of the your columns is going to be considered along the y-axis. So we are going to orient the beams in the horizontal direction. So say if it is the origin of the column, and we are going to consider the length in this direction. Say these are the axis of the column, and both the ends are, because both the ends are pinned, and these are the notations we are going to use for the pin, and we will consider the deflection in the positive direction of the y, and I will tell you the reason why I am considering the deflection in the positive direction of y. Otherwise, you can also consider the deflection in the negative direction of the y. Later on, I will clarify why I am considering the deflection along the positive direction of the y. So x is going to be towards right, and y is going to be upward direction. And say since both the ends are pinned, and this is this end is going to be the origin, and say this is O, and this end is say A, and the load is being applied along the axis of the column. So this one is the load. So O I will specify here, and the load, external load that is being applied, and this is the limiting value of the load we need to identify PE, and on the other end there will be a reaction of the equal amount PE, and this is the value of the load we need to identify. So according to the theory, what we used to do, we will try to find out the moment at a cross section x away from the origin, and then we will relate the moments, and we will consider the equilibrium for the moment, and try to form the equation which we are going to solve later on. So let's consider a point along the length, say at a distance x, and the section is say B, and at B we will try to find out the moments. So this is the cross section. This is the cross section where we will try to find out the value of the moments. So under the equilibrium condition, we have already considered if the load is being applied for the equilibrium, and we are talking about the neutral equilibrium. So the algebraic sum of the forces must be equal to 0, and the algebraic sum of the moments must also be equal to 0. So since we are considering the neutral equilibrium, the value of the load corresponding to the neutral equilibrium, so the neutral equilibrium, as already told in the last session, that the neutral equilibrium corresponds to the situation of the loading beyond which your equilibrium conditions transformed into the unstable equilibrium conditions, and below this point the conditions of the equilibrium are the stable equilibrium conditions. So since we are trying to find out the maximum value, so we are going to deal with we are considering the section where the bending moment is maximum, and then we will try to form the say we are actually we are not finding out the say the point where for the given loading the bending moment is maximum. Actually we are not aware what kind of the load it is. We are considering that at a distance x the bending moment is going to be the maximum, and then we are going to form the equation which we are going to solve later on. So at this point say the bending moment is the b, and mb, bending moment mb will be equal to the sign conventions we are going to follow as we have already considered in the last session, which are consistent with the mathematical expressions. And the sign conventions for the bending moments are sign conventions across a cross section. When we are dealing with the right, then the bending in the anti-clockwise direction, when the forces are acting in the upward direction, is going to be positive, and to the left of the section when the bending tendency is clockwise, then they are going to be considered as positive. So based upon these signs we are going to form the bending equation at point B, and this distance is say x, and the deflection at this point, that is the deflection at this point is say equal to y. So bending because the ends are pinned, since the ends are pinned, we know that the pin ends they allow the relative rotation. So there is no resistance for the rotation. Hence, the reacting movements at the pin end is equal to 0. There will be no reaction in the form of the moments at the pins, because they readily allow the relative rotary motion with respect to the each other. So the moment here is 0 because of the point load, and we are going to move from the left to the right up to the point B, and then we are going to consider the different loads and their the moment. So at point O the moment is equal to 0, and at the point B, when we reach the point B, then the P is going to induce a moment in the anti-clockwise direction, and the anti-clockwise direction towards the left of the cross section is going to be considered negative, and the magnitude of this the sign is going to be negative, and the magnitude of this moment is going to be PE into the distance from the point B, perpendicular distance from the point B. So this distance is equal to y minus P into y. Now from the yesterday's the previous discussion, we have identified that the bending moment is given by m is given by EI into T, second derivative of the or the rate of change of the slope, or second derivative of the deflection with respect to the distance along the length of the beam, dx square, or the rate of change of the slope. So this is the equation we are going to use, and according to this equation we are going to have the value that the bending moment is going to be equal to at point B will be represented by EI d square y upon dx square, and this will be equal to minus P into y, and this can be written as EI d square y upon dx square plus P into y equal to 0. So it seems to be a second order differential equation which is linear and homogeneous, and in order to transform into the homogeneous linear differential equation of the second order, then we know that the derivative d, capital D is being used for it is a derivative operator which is being used for the derivative, that is d upon dx, and obviously d square is then going to be equal to the second derivative with respect to dx. Then the equation already we know that the format for the linear second order differential equation, that is of the form d square plus n square, where n is a constant, d square plus n square into y is equal to 0. Then such a form of the differential equation is linear, and it is also homogeneous because there is no term on the right of the equation. So if we have to, if we need to transform this equation in this form, and we readily know what is the solution for this linear second order differential equation, which is homogeneous also. That is, since the sign is positive, then the roots for these equations is going to be imaginary, and we also know that the second order linear differential equation, any solutions, constant multiplication is also a solution, and the linear addition of the solution is also a solution. So we already know that the roots are imaginary, then the solution for this differential equation, a second order differential equation, is given by y equal to a sine nx plus b cos nx is a solution. So you see that the root nx, that is the solution nx itself satisfies this equation, and the cos nx satisfies this equation, and the constant multiplication of sin x and the cos nx individually also satisfy this equation. And particular solution, if it is not homogeneous, then we are going to have a particular solution also, but since there is no term on the right hand side and it is equal to 0, so the particular solution in this case is equal to 0. So initially I have told you that you consider the deflection in the positive direction of the y, and you choose these coordinate systems where we are considering the deflection along the y-axis and the length positive direction along the x-axis. So it will always form the equation of the type plus, that d square plus n square. That is, we are going to deal with the imaginary root of the second order differential equation. Otherwise, if the sign is in other case, if you are considering consider the deflection in the negative direction of the y, then the sign over here for the sign convention which we are choosing is going to be negative, and then we are going to deal with the real roots, and that is going to be exponential in nature, and the exponential curves are comparatively difficult to interpret for the certain values as compared to the your trigonometric functions. So trigonometric functions, because we are dealing with them from our childhood, it is easy to interpret them for the any value of x. So that's why, for that convenience, I have considered that you consider the bending or the deflection of the your column in the direction of, in the positive direction of y, so that we are having this form of the equation when we are dealing with the trigonometric terms in the solution. So in order to transform this equation in this form, what we are going to do, we are going to remove the coefficient of the d square, that is dy square upon dx square. So it can be written in the form d square second derivative of the slope deflection plus p upon ei, that is, we are going to divide the whole equation with ei, this, and multiplied by y is going to be equal to 0. So this is of the form of this equation. So these two equations are consistent, that is d square y, I have already told it is d square, and from this equation, say this is equation, say this one, this is 1, and say this is your equation 2, and say this is the equation 3. Then from the equation, equations 2 and 3, standard equation and the equation we have found, so we identified that n square is equal to p upon ei, or n is equal to under root p upon ei. Say this is equation number 4 we are going to use later on. So so let us consider the solution. So we need to solve this equation, that is y is equal to a sine nx, where nx and n is equal to under root p by e, plus b cos nx. So in order to solve this equation, what we need the value of the two constants. It means we need the two boundary conditions, and we may require one more boundary condition, so that we are able to conclude for the value of n, and so that we, and n is the term which contains the value of the critical load. So because I am using the load PE, then we need to use the subscript PE over here. So PE is going to be the subscript that is going to be used to denote that this is the value of the critical load based upon the Euler's theory. So because we don't have the space, I am going to delete this, and you may refer it later on. So this is the equation we need to solve, and say this is equation number 5, and the boundary conditions. So boundary conditions, okay, I have already deleted that. The boundary conditions, I am going to draw it again. So this was the length O, this is the length A, and we are considering the deflection. So this is the axis actually, and we have to use the appropriate sign. And this is another pin end, and say this was the point B, and the deflection from the x-axis is y, and this is for y, and this, in this direction we are dealing with the x. So from the boundary conditions, this is the pin at first boundary condition is at x equal to 0. We know that y is also equal to 0. Second boundary condition is at x equal to L. This is the length, L is the length of the beam, sorry, your column. It seems to be beam because I have oriented it horizontally. So this is the length of the column. So at x equal to L, y is again equal to 0. And the another condition, say if we talk about the slope at the ends O and A, so we know that because the ends are pinned, then the slope is not equal to 0 over here. So that condition cannot be used. We cannot use the condition that at x equal to 0, dy upon dx is equal to 0, because dy upon dx is not equal to 0, but in this case may be maximum. So another condition is because we are considering the simple load which is being applied axially to equal and opposite loads being are applied axially. So we know that the slope at the half of the length is going to be equal to 0. Then the third condition, if we require, if we are not able to conclude for the n here, then the third condition we can use at x equal to L by 2, dy upon dx is equal to 0. So we can use any two combinations for the evaluation of the constant a and b. Then we can use the third combination, third boundary condition to conclude for the value of n. So I am using the first two conditions. Say this is 1, 2, and this one is say 3. Third conditions. So from the first condition, from condition 1, we have identified that at x equal to 0, y equal to 0, substitute these conditions from condition 1 and the equation 5. We are going to have 0 equal to sine 0 is going to be 0, this term is going to be 0, then b cos 0 is going to be 1, then this is going to be b multiplied by 1. So it implies that b is equal to 0. Now from second boundary condition, condition 2 and equation 5, we are going to have at x equal to n, y is again equal to 0. This is going to be 0 at, and since the constant b is equal to 0, so this term is going to be 0, only we are going to have this term, and this is going to be a sine the value of n for the second condition is L, so n L, this is the situation, and from here we conclude that either A should be equal to 0 or sine NL should be equal to 0. So this conclusion is not valid, because we are having B equal to 0, and if the constant A is again going to be 0, then for this equation y is always going to be 0 for any value of x, which is not possible. So the conclusion is sine NL is equal to 0, and we know that the value of your angle in radians which satisfy this condition is when NL is equal to 0 radians, when it is equal to pi, and when it is equal to 2 pi and equal to 3 pi, and so on. So it is this equation. So from here we are able to identify that the critical load is going to have infinite solutions. That is, the critical load values are going to be infinite. So NL equal to 0, again the first, if we try to satisfy the first condition, NL equal to 0. So you see that either L should be equal to 0, which is not possible, because physically we are going to deal with the column whose length is going to be obviously there, and always n should not be equal to 0, because this is the applied load and we are dealing with the constants E and I. So obviously this is not a practical solution, So another solution is when NL is equal to pi radians. So when NL is equal to pi radians, then substitute the value of n, which is from equation 4. We are having Pe upon Ei under root L is equal to pi, and squaring this is from because of equation 4, and squaring on both the sides we are going to have Pe upon Ei L square is equal to pi square, and from this equation we are able to find out the limiting value of the RL load, which is equal to pi square into Ei upon L square. So this is the limiting value of the load in case when the columns both end are pinned. So another condition equation is when the angle value in radians is 2 pi. Obviously in that case the load is going to be multiplied by the factor 4, and for the other condition it is going to be multiplied by the factor 9, and the load is obviously going to be increased for the subsequent conditions by the large amount, and since this is the sufficient load which has been identified practically, because this is the limiting value of the load. Beyond this value, the another equilibrium conditions corresponds to the unstable equilibrium conditions. That is, the stress induced corresponding to this load is sufficiently large actually. That is the limiting point corresponding to the neutral equilibrium. Beyond this point, the condition of the stability turned into the unstable equilibrium conditions, and all the solution subsequent to 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, and n number of solutions, they corresponds to the unstable equilibrium conditions. So the fundamental mode of buckling in this case is going to be the condition when we are dealing with the solution when the angle value is equal to pi. So when the angle value is going to be equal to pi, then in that case we are going to have the half sine wave. We are going to have the half sine wave in this case. That is in case when we are dealing with the column with the end condition, both the ends are pinned. Both the ends are pinned. So in that case we are going to have the single half sine wave, and this corresponds to the value pi, and this is known as the fundamental mode of buckling for this type of end of the column.
fundamental, and this condition is known as fundamental mode of buckling. Fundamental mode of buckling means, as I have already told, beyond this point we are having the solutions that satisfy the equation, but they correspond to the unstable equilibrium conditions. So fundamental mode of buckling is the lowest value of the critical load, feasible value of the critical load. Zero is not the feasible value of the critical load. Lowest feasible value of the critical load, beyond which the instability of the column is going to be unstable, and it is going to collapse readily beyond that point. And fundamental mode of buckling, in case when we are dealing with both the ends are pinned, is going to be the situation when we are going to have the bow, that is the band, and single sine half sine wave we are going to have, because full sine wave is of the form, full sine wave is of this form. So half sine wave we are going to have as a fundamental mode of buckling in case when the both the ends of the column and in struts specifically are pinned. So this is the critical value of the load. So another type of the column for which we are going to find out is, I am going to escape the two that by following the same procedure we are able to find out the values for the critical loads for the other types of the end conditions of the column, and that is the studs. And I am going to consider one more example so that we are able to clarify more on the earlier theory to find out the limiting value of the critical load. So second case which I am going to consider is when second case is when one end fixed and other pinned. So for such a situation, again we are going to apply the Euler theories, and we will try to find out the critical value of the Euler load. So one end fixed, as I've already told, I'm going to orient. I'm going to consider the diffraction along the vertical axis y, and along this axis I'm going to consider the axis of the column, and say this is your x direction, and say this end is fixed, this end is fixed, and fixed end, let's say the origin is O, and another end is fixed, and we are considering the deflection in the positive direction of y when the load is being applied along the axis, longitudinal axis from the pinned end. So this limiting value of the load is Euler load, which is denoted by PE. And since we have considered the origin here, again we are considering the point at which, say, we are trying to find out the bending moment, and say this point, if this point is A, then say let us consider this point as B, and at this point we are trying to find out the value of the bending moment, expression for the value of the bending moment, and from the origin, say its distance is equal to, say, x. So for the equilibrium, first of all we need to find out the reactions at the fixed end. So as you can see, initially it was aligned along the axis, and when the load is being applied, it is deflected in the anti-clockwise direction with respect to the O. So the fixing moment is going to balance it. It is going to be in the clockwise direction. So this is going to be in the clockwise direction, fixing moment. So this is going, I am going to represent it, say, with another, and the end is, say, fixed, and say it is being represented by the red color, and this is the moment. Okay, and this is the moment which is being applied when this your support is being removed. So this is the reaction of the support. So I am drawing the equilibrium diagram, removing the supports over here. I am superimposing the equilibrium diagram on the same configuration diagram. So this is going to be the moment, and this is the load, applied load. Say it is also being represented, say, by the red color. So this is the applied load. It is being applied over here, and since the moment is going to apply in the clockwise direction, then this hand is, though this hand is pinned, so it is basically fixed in the position, but deformation is allowed in the axial direction, and there will be reaction because the clockwise moment is acting here. Then this hand is tends to move in the downward direction, so we should have a force which is going to be act in the upward direction. So there will be a force which will be act in the upward direction to balance this moment. About the point O, it is going to induce the anti-clockwise movement. Again, then for the neutral equilibrium, algebraic sum of the forces must be equal to 0. If the upward force is going to act over here, then there should be a downward force over here. So downward force is going to be induced at this end, which is going to be of the same magnitude. Say this is your F4O, and say this is your FA. Then from the equation, this equation, we are going to have FO is equal to FA is equal to, say, F. And from the second condition of the equilibrium, the algebraic sum of the moments must be equal to 0 for the entire beam we are talking about. So because say we are considering the moment about O, so about O the moment is M, which is clockwise, and obviously this load's moment about the O, because it is acting along the axis, its moment is going to be 0. Another force which is passing through the point O, its moment is also going to be the 0. Only the opposite moment is being produced by the FA in the anti-clockwise direction. So from here we will find out M is equal to FA is equal to F into the length, which is equal to L in this case. So the length of the stud or the column is capital L. So by proceeding in the same way, we will try to find out the bending moment at bending moment MB at B. So the sign conventions we are going to follow. Sign conventions we are going to follow. Sign convention we are going to follow is across the cross section, anti-clockwise movements to the right, because the right of the force is going to be positive, and the clockwise movements to the left of the forces, due to the left of the forces is going to be positive. These are the sign convention. So the equation for the moment at B is going to be equal to that clockwise moment is acting. We are going to move from left to right. So immediately when we start from O, then we have identified that the moment in the clockwise direction is acting. So this is going to be positive. M is going to be positive, and the value of M is equal to F into L. So let us substitute the direct value, that M is equal to F into L. So this is going to be F into L, because the value of M is equal to F into L, and the sign is positive. And then the moment at this point, because of your O is 0, because directly we are considering the moment about the B, then this is the moment, and the moment about the B because of F naught O, and F naught is equal to F, and it is acting in the downward direction when we are dealing with the left of the section. So this is going to negative, and the F into X is going to be the moment. And then we have not considered actually the load in the horizontal direction. The reaction is also going to be here in this direction, which is PE. So for the horizontal equilibrium, vertical we have already considered, and for the horizontal equilibrium, this is going to be the reaction load at the fixed end. So this load is also going to induce a moment, and say the deflection at this point is, say, equal to Y. So Y. So the moment about B because of the load PE is going to be again anti-clockwise, and we are dealing with the forces to the left of the section. Then anti-clockwise is going to minus PE into Y. So this is the formula, and from the equation 1, M is going to be equal to EI d square y upon dx square, and say all the terms I am taking to the left hand side, and the standard form, as I have already told, for the linear second order differential equation, whether it is homogeneous or non-homogeneous, it is of the form d square plus n square into y is equal to n square into any function of x. This is for the non-homogeneous equation. So this is say this is equation number 2. Say, so in order to transform this equation into this form, so I am going to consider the y term over here. So this is going to be PE into y, and non-y terms is going to be on the right hand side. So I am going to have f into L minus x on the right hand side, and since in order we need to transform this equation into this form, so we are going to divide the whole equation throughout by EI. Then this is going to be d square y upon dx square plus PEy upon EI is equal to f upon EI into L minus x. Again, it has left hand side has been transformed into the standard form, but the right hand side we need the n square. So n square, we know that the n square is PE upon EI. So we need to multiply from the left hand side. You are able to identify that the n square uh, uh, from say this is the equation. Okay, let us transform. Say this is being multiplied by P and divided by PE. So it is not going to make any difference. So when we are going to do it, then the next is going to be dy dx square plus PEy upon EI is equal to PE upon EI, and the remaining term is going to be f upon PE into L minus x. So when we compare this equation with this standard equation, we will identify, say this is the equation number say 3. Now from equation 3 and 2, we identified that the n square is equal to PE upon EI as in the previous case. So this implies that n is equal to under root PE upon EI, and this is based upon comparison of equation because of equations 2 and 3. So this is the equation which we have transformed into the second order linear differential equation, which is not homogeneous, and we know that this again the roots are going to be imaginary, and the solution for this equation is y equal to a sin nx plus b cos nx, because the right hand side the term is not equal to 0. The coefficient of the n square, which is in this case is f by p l minus x, when we compare these two equations. So this is going to be the particular solution. So plus f upon pe into l minus x. So I have used the simple theory of the comparison, through which I am able to find out the particular solution, and I am able to transform the equation into the form so that I can use the readily available solutions for the equation, which are the general solutions. Otherwise, by the theory of the differentiation, you are also able to find out that the particular value of the solution by the methods you already know in mathematics. So this is the equation we need to solve. So in order to solve this equation, we need the boundary conditions. Say this is equation number 4. We need the boundary conditions. So the boundary conditions, obviously 3 boundary conditions are required basically. to conclude for the n boundary conditions. So the boundary conditions are, first boundary condition is, say at x equal to 0, at x equal to 0, y is equal to 0, and the second condition is at x equal to L, y is again equal to 0, and since this end is fixed, this end is fixed, and for the fixed end we know that the y at this point the slope is also equal to 0. So third condition is, and I have told you the reason why the slope at the fixed end is equal to 0 and why it is not equal to 0 at the pin end. So at x equal to 0, dy upon dx in this case is also equal to 0. So we'll see whether we require the third condition or not. From the first two conditions, you can use any two pairs. From the first two pairs, I am going to identify the value of the constant a and the b. So from the condition 1, from condition 1 and equation 4, we have 0 equal to x equal to 0 means sine component is going to be 0 plus, and the coefficient of the b is going to be equal to 1, and plus fl upon pe because x equal to 0. From here we identified that b is equal to minus fl upon pe. So this is the value of b, and from the another boundary condition again similarly, from condition 2 and equation 4, we have y equal to 0 at x equal to L. So b, since okay the b is not equal to 0, so we have to incorporate both the constants, and so a sine nl, and the value of b is minus fl upon e, so minus fl upon pe, the value of b, and then the cos nx, and then the value of x is L, so L, and plus f upon PE, and this term is going to be 0. This term is going to be 0 because x is equal to 0. So this term is going to be 0. So from here we are able to find out the value of A. So A is going to be equal to FL upon PE, negative sign is going to be cancelled out, FL upon PE cos NL upon sin NL. So we can write it down as, either you can write it cot NL or you can write it in the tangent form. So this implies that A is equal to FL upon PE into 1 by 10 NL, because we know the function for the angle, trigonometric functions variation for the angle. So substituting the values of the constant, we are going to have y equal to a is equal to fl upon pe tangent of nl, and then sine nx minus b is fl upon pe, and then multiplied by cos nx, and then the particular term which is f upon pe into L minus x. So we are going to solve. So this is the equation in terms of the values of the constant. So we are not able to conclude from the applying the two boundary conditions over here for the value of the n. So we are going to apply the third boundary condition, and say this is the equation number 5. So from boundary condition 3 and equation 5, what we are having, we need first the slope actually, because we are dealing with dy upon dx is equal to 0. So it means we need to find out first the slope. So before we conclude for these condition and the equation, we need the slope. So consider the derivative of y with respect to x. So we need to differentiate the equation 5 with respect to x. Then this is the constant term, because there is no x term over here. So f upon f into L PE tangent of NL, and differentiation of, this is on the numerator side, this is on the numerator side actually. तो ये हमारे को थोड़ा सा ध्यान में रखना है, ये नीचे है और ये न्यूमरेटर की साइड पे है. So this is actually multiplied by this side. So differentiation of cos is sine is cos nx, and then the differentiation of the angle, so we will have the value n over here, and differentiation of cos is minus sine, so the sine is going to be positive, and this is going to be FL upon PE, and sine nx, and differentiation of the angle, we are going to have the value n, and differentiation of the first term is going to be 0, second term is going to be minus f upon PE. So this is the differentiation, and now say this is the equation number 6. Now from equation 6 and condition 3, we are going to have dy upon dx is equal to 0 at x equal to 0. So this is going to be 0 at x equal to 0. So this term is going to be 0, and this term is going to be, this is going to be 1. So this is going to be FL n upon PE 10 NL, and multiplied by 1 plus 0 and minus f upon PE, minus f upon PE. So f upon PE can be taken common out, and this is going to be divided by 0, so 0 हो जाएगा. So we are going to have the value L n upon 10 of Ln or NL minus 1 is equal to 0. So this implies that tangent of NL is equal to NL. So the any value of the angle that satisfy this function is found out to be, you can check on your calculator, this value find out to be equivalent to, that is NL, that is the value of NL is equal to 4.5 radians, something 4.5 radians. So the value of the tangent 4.5 radians is equal to 4.5 radians, here 4.5 itself. So NL is equal to 4.5. So from here we can conclude, since we are able to form the equation for the n over here, so we are able to conclude that n is equal to 4.5 divided by L, or n is equal to, from that equation we have identified that the n is equal to PE upon under root PE upon EI. So this will be equal to under root PE upon EI equal to 4.5 divided by L. So squaring on both the sides, we are going to have PE upon EI is equal to 20.25 I think divided by L square, and finally the value of the P is going to be equal to 20.25 into EI divided by L square. So in the previous case we have identified the value of the load for the pinned end. For the pinned end it was equal to pi square into EI upon L square. And similarly, for the other cases, we have identified it is the function of pi square. So we need to transform this constant into in terms of the pi also. So let us relate it. So say if I need to find out the value of pi square over here. So uh, let us divide it. So that I am able to find out how many pi squares are there in 20 divided by 25. So this is going to be so the approximate value of pi is 3.14. So 9 to the 18. So this is something going to be equal to, that is what I am doing. I am trying to find out how many pi's are there for 20.25. So let us do it. So by comparing, where should I do? Say 20.25 divided by the pi square give us something 2, because I'm saying I've already calculated it 8, but pi square is something about greater than 9, and if we are having 9, then 9 to the 18 something, because it is greater than 9, so something about 2 something. So approximately 2.0 something is the value, so it can be taken safely as 2, and the value, because we are taking the lower side actually. So the value in terms of pi is going to be equal to, from here you can see 2.25, 20.25 is equal to 2 pi square. So in terms of pi, the critical load is equal to 2 pi square EI upon L square, and this is the value of the critical load when the one end is fixed and the other end is pinned. So unlike the previous case, we are not having the multiple solution here, we are having the single solution. I haven't tried for the other values. I feel the tangent approaches the angle when the value of the angle is very very small. So this is going to be the only value which is going to satisfy it, for the only positive value which is going to satisfy this function. For the other values, I don't think it is going to be satisfied. So it is having only one solution. And so let us conclude. So we have discussed this, and now we will conclude. Conclusion on Euler's theory on the buckling of the studs, where we have identified the value of the critical load. So the first was when both ends are pinned. When both the ends are pinned, then the value of the critical load, Euler's load, is equal to pi square EI upon L square. Another case is the case when one end is fixed and other end free, where the other end is free. So in that case, the value of critical load. So this is the most unstable condition actually, when the end is free. So when the end is free, any disturbance is going to deviate the equilibrium state from the stable or the non-equilibrium state into the unstable equilibrium state. So value of the load in this case is going to be comparatively lower in comparison to the other end condition. So it is going to be equal to pi square EI upon 4 into L square, 1/4 of the first case when both the ends are pinned. And the third one is when both ends fixed. So it has been identified that the value of PE in this case is 4 times the value of the pinned ends. So this is going to be pi square EI upon L square 4 times. This is the value. So obviously when both ends are fixed, this is going to be the most stable conditions when we are talking about the stability, and the bearing capacity of such a column is going to be the highest when we are dealing with the same material and the same length. And the third condition is when, which we have already considered, is when one end fixed and other pinned. So under this situation, the load find out to be PE has been found out to 2 pi square EI upon L square. So these are the different values of the critical load for the different types of the end conditions of the studs. So you see that we are able to compare them with the standard value of the pinned section. In comparative to it, I've already identified that in case of this situation, it is 1/4 of this value. This is 4 times this value, and this is 2 times this value. So we are able to represent these critical loading condition with a standard formula where the length in terms of the equivalent length, where the equivalent length will dependent upon the type of the end condition. So we are able to write down the formula for all types of the end condition, which is equal to pi square EI upon small l square, where this L is equal to, where this L square is equal to, where this L is equivalent length that depends on end conditions of struts. So in case of the when both ends are fixed, in case of one, for case 1, when the both ends are fixed, L is equal to L. For case 2, we identified that the value of L is equal to 2L. So value of L is equal to 2L. So when the value of L is going to be 2L, it is going to be 4 into L square, which is the value. And for the case 3, the value of L is going to be L by 2. This is going to be L by 2. So when I am going to take the square and substitute over L square divided by 4, and this is going to be the value. And another is when the fourth condition of the end is being considered, then the equivalent length is going to be equal to L by root 2. L by root 2. So these lengths also tell us about the fundamental mode of buckling for the corresponding ends. So we have identified in case of when both ends are pinned, then the equivalent length is equal to the length L, which is the length of the half full sine wave, which is equal to the length of the half sine wave. So if I try to draw over here the buckling fundamental mode of the buckling, so in this case this is going to be equal to when both the ends are fixed for the case 1, when both the ends are fixed. So this is the axis pin end, and in that case we are going to have, this is the length, and we are going to have the equivalent length is equal to, equivalent length physically is equal to the length of the half sine wave. So half sine wave, that is one bow, it is equal to L. So this is the fundamental mode of buckling for the case 1. For the case 1. In case 2, when the one hand is fixed and the another hand is free. For the case 2. For the case 2. So one hand is fixed. Say lower hand is fixed. So this is the initial condition, and upon loading other hand is free. So upon loading, that is when the critical load is being reached. This is PE. So the half sine wave which is going to be drawn is we need to complete it, and it is identified that the length of this half sine wave has been identified practically. So this is equal to L is equal to 2L. So my point here is the small l is the equivalent length that corresponds to the half sine wave, length of the half sine wave. So length of the half sine wave for the first case is equal to L. For the second case, it is equal to 2L, where this length is equal to this length is equal to this length is equal to L. This is the another L. So we are going to have the mirror image in order to complete this here, the half sine wave. So this is also equal to L. In case 3, when both the ends are fixed, in that case these are the fixed end. So this is the axial loading. In that case, when the load is being applied over here, say critical value of the load, reaction is going to be here, critical value of the load, and it has been identified that the two half sine waves, 1/4 at the top and 1/4 at the bottom. So this is equal to L by 4, quarter of the sine wave, and this is equal to L by 2, and this is equal to L by 4, length of the quarter of the wave, and this is the half of the wave, where this distance is equal to L. So from here, the equivalent length physically is equal to when we are comparing L with the fundamental mode of buckling. So we have identified that the length of the half sine wave in this case is L by 2, and these are the half of L by 2, half of L by 2. Total length is going to be equal to L. So we are having the two half sine waves in this case. So the length is going to be L by 2, and this is the case when the equivalent length is equal to L by 2. Another case is when the case 4, that is when the one end is fixed and the other end is pinned. So if this is the fixed end and this is the initial axis, and say this is the pinned end, and I've already shown this, and this is the case, and when the load is being applied over here, PE, this type of the deflection curve we have already considered when we have find out the value of the expression for the critical load. So reaction is going to be here, which is equal to PE. So this length actually turned out to be L by root 2 equal to equivalent length. That is the length of the half sine wave. So length of the half sine wave is equal to or in other words, it may be somewhere around equal to 0.7 L, which is 1 by root 2, 0.7. So what we have identified that the fundamental mode of the buckling is dependent upon the type of the end conditions of the column. It is a single half wave in case when the end conditions are both end conditions are pinned. It is half of the half sine wave when the one end is fixed and the another end is pinned, and this is the fundamental mode of buckling in case of your fixed end is like this, and fundamental mode for the buckling in case of your when one end is fixed and another end is pinned is somewhat like this. So the point here is the fundamental mode of buckling is dependent upon the type of the end conditions, and equivalent length depend upon the length of the half sine wave that is being formed during the fundamental mode of buckling. So as we have already considered in the beginning, that for that we have identified the different modes of the buckling for the pinned end, and we have considered the fundamental mode as the mode which corresponds to the minimum value of the critical load, and the subsequent values of the mode of the buckling, they corresponds to the non-equilibrium or not non-equilibrium, unstable equilibrium conditions. So that is what is to be avoided in case of the columns or the cylinder columns, which are the struts. So this is what we have scheduled for the today's session. So thank you very much.